The day was slipping fast, laying a molten ribbon of sunlight across Redstone Bridge as Eli Mercer urged his bay across the planks. Autumn dust drifted like powder gold, and the copper river below beat against granite in a steady drum. Eli rode alone, saddle creaking, mind turning to supper in the warmth of his pot-bellied stove, until the silence cracked. A carriage wheel lay splintered ahead, and gun smoke curled blue in the amber light. Beside it, 3 riders in motley bandanas forced a dark-haired woman toward the canyon mouth. She didn't scream. Instead, in a voice firm as church oak, she recited a fragment of Psalm 23. That calm stopped Eli cold. Only one woman in Clearwater Bend carried scripture like a knife. Margaret Hale, the mayor's wife. Eli's spine thrummed. Red Jack Coulter, scarlet scarf, 6-gun easy as breath, spun to face him. "Evening, drifter. Keep to your lane." Thunder rumbled far off, promising a hard western storm, but Eli's blood was louder. In the fading glare, he saw Margaret's wrists bound with reins and fresh bruises across the carriage door. Bandits thought dusk and distance would hide their theft. They hadn't counted on a lone ranch hand schooling them in surprise. He coaxed his horse 2 lengths closer, right hand dangling as though slack. "That lady belongs to the town," he said, voice steady, "and the town's still awake." Red Jack laughed, aiming his Colt skyward. "Sleep comes early out here." Eli lifted his hat brim, signaled to the bay, and drew in one clean motion. His rifle barked once, slug burying deep in a bridge beam just inches above Red Jack's ear. The echo slapped the canyon walls. Coulter's mount reared, scattering the gang's line. Eli kicked hard, closed the gap, and swung the rifle stock like a hammer. A bandit toppled into the dust, groaning. In the same breath, Eli snapped the reins, ripping Margaret free, heaving her sideways across his saddle like a sack of feed. Gunfire lit the bridge in white flashes. Splinters sprayed. Margaret clutched Eli's coat, whispering, "Ride for the willows." He bolted down the flood-cut slope, hooves grinding shale, sparks chasing them into the shadows beneath stone. Bullets whined overhead, ricocheting off rock like angry bees. River mist cooled their faces as the bay plunged through reeds and splashed to the opposite bank, half hidden by drooping willow branches. They paused behind a fallen cottonwood, where dusk pooled violet. Both caught breath, hearts still drumming in their throats. Margaret's composure never broke. She slipped a silver locket from under her torn bodice, pressing it into Eli's rough palm. "This isn't jewelry," she murmured. "It's a promise older than the bridge itself. Keep it alive, and the town lives with it." The locket felt strangely warm, etched with 5 interlocking symbols Eli didn't recognize. Rail, pickaxe, feather, star, broken chain. Before he could speak, distant hoofbeats multiplied above, echoing off canyon stone. Bandits regrouped on the bridge, lanterns flaring like fireflies against the darkening sky. Overhead, thunderheads rolled in, staining the horizon indigo. Night would swallow the valley long before they reached town, and the river route was slick, treacherous, blind. Eli glanced at the woman whose courage had already steadied his own. "We'll cut west along the floodplain," he said. "Keep low and trust the horse." Margaret nodded, but her gaze lingered on the silver locket. "There's writing inside," she whispered, "words that bind more fiercely than any rope. Read them when dawn feels far away." Lightning flickered, turning the canyon to a strobe of golden black. Above it all, Red Jack's drawl carried on the wind. "You can't outrun dark, cowboy." Eli swung into the saddle, Margaret behind, arms tight around his waist. The bay shifted, muscles coiled. Hoofbeats above grew louder. Lanterns bobbed like angry stars, closing. Thunder cracked once, sharp, definite. Then the first cold drops of rain began to fall. The horse leapt forward, hooves splashing through silver river water that mirrored the stormy sky. Wind tore Margaret's hat away. It sailed into darkness like a fallen halo. Behind them, bridge planks groaned under galloping pursuit. Eli fixed his eyes on the faint cattle trail threading west, mind racing through roots and risks, every sense on edge. In that breathless rush, a single thought flared bright. Kindness must carry a spine. The creed of his late father rose like a hymn inside him. If bullets and thunder wanted the night, they could have it. But the locket, the promise, and the woman would greet sunrise. They disappeared into willow shadow, rain thickening, river roar swallowing hoofbeats. Above, lightning painted the bridge white, revealing Red Jack's frustrated face as he reined his horse at the slick descent, unwilling to gamble in the dark. For now, Eli and Margaret were ghosts in the storm, alive but hunted. Would you brave night and bullet for a stranger's promise? Stay with Eli's trail. Dawn is still miles away. Rain pasted Eli's shirt to his shoulders as the bay picked its way along the flooded trail. Each lightning flash showed jagged cliffs above, black river below, and no pursuers yet in sight. When the trail leveled, Eli spotted an old line shack half hidden by chokecherry scrub, a timber box no one had worked in 10 years. He guided the horse inside the roofed lean-to, lifted Margaret down, and barred the warped door with a fallen beam. Water drummed steady on the tin. The place smelled of cedar shavings and mouse dust, but it would have to do. Eli struck a lucifer against his boot heel, coaxing a matchstick glow to the single lantern left hanging on a peg. The flame bloomed amber, catching motes in the air like slow snow. Margaret eased onto an overturned crate, smoothing her rain-soaked skirt, more winded than she'd shown on the bridge. Eli knelt to check her wrists. Rope burn, nothing broken, then fed tinder to the rusted stove until a cough of flame licked the iron. Warmth crawled into the shack, staving off the shiver rising in both of them. Only then did Margaret unclasp the silver locket. A soft click, a glow of lamplight on polished metal, and the halves opened like wings. Inside lay a tightly folded parchment, corners browned, ink faint. She handed it to Eli with a gravity older than fear. "Clearwater Compact," she said. "My grandmother hid it during the railroad riots. Folks forgot their promise. Trouble bloomed. Tonight it's our lantern." Eli unfolded the fragile paper. 5 symbols ringed the heading: a rail spike, a miner's pick, a feather, a broken chain link, a 5-point star. Beneath, 20 names in looping hands: ranchers, tribal chiefs, freedmen, war widows, swore to defend one another in trade and trial. A final clause, its ink darker than the rest, read, "If recited at first bell before the whole town, all quarrels shall submit to peaceful hearing." Eli's thumb rested on that line, and something settled in his chest. A direction, not yet a plan. A faint creak outside made them both turn. The door pushed in, and a tall woman entered, rain slicking silver down her braids. She leaned on a white cedar staff carved with treaty glyphs that glowed pale in lamplight. Her eyes, smoke gray and steady, met Eli's without alarm. "Evening, rider," she said, voice sand low. "Name's Nuna Greyfeather. The river sent word you'd need dry roof." Margaret exhaled relief. "Elder Nuna, the compact lives." Nuna nodded, stepping closer to study the parchment. "Ink fades, but a promise breathes when spoken," she murmured. She tapped the staff's iron tip twice on the floor. Echo resonant. "Dawn's first bell rings in 5 hours. Clearwater Square must hear those words. After that, Red Jack can waste powder or lay down arms, but the law of many voices will stand." Wind rattled the shutters. Eli listened to the storm. Mind-mapping roads, creeks, shortcuts. The valley offered 3 routes to town: Ridge Trail, exposed, moonlit; Riverbank, muddy but hidden; Redstone Road, shortest, yet sure to be watched. He closed the lantern chimney, dimming flame, and asked, "Which way's safest with daylight gone?" Nuna lifted her staff toward the window where river fog crawled. "Water covers footprints," she said. "Take the bank. The horse will feel its own path, and willows shield you." Margaret touched Eli's sleeve. "You'll guide us?" He met her eyes, calm, flint bright. "I'll guide," he said. Steam drifted from his gloves as he pulled them on. He tucked the compact inside a leather Bible cover, pressed it flat against his chest. Treaty rides closest to the heart. They doused the stove, killing sparks. Rain eased to a whisper on the roof. Outside, the river glowed pewter beneath cloud-smeared moon. Eli saddled up, helped Margaret mount behind him. Nuna swung easily onto a piebald pony tethered nearby, staff held upright like a banner. Lantern out, they slipped from the shack into wet hush, hooves muffled in moss and sand. Half a mile downriver, a sudden rifle crack split the night. Sharp, lonely, too close. A second shot barked reply from cliffside heights. Lanterns flicked alive along Redstone Road, jerking like angry fireflies. Red Jack's men had found the shack, and the hunt was newly begun. Eli pressed the bay into a trot, water splashing their boots, compact warm against his ribs. Fog swallowed them. Behind over storm hush rode booted echoes, pursuit gaining ground. Dawn and the first bell of Clearwater Bend felt an ocean away. The fog clung to Eli's hat brim as the bay splashed forward, river water lapping its knees in a hushed pewter swirl. Margaret's arms locked around his middle. Elder Nuna rode beside them, white cedar staff held high, its carved glyphs catching stray moonlight like old bone. Every few lengths the bank rose in knotted roots, forcing the horses to wade deeper, then climb through slick mud before the current stole their footing. Behind the echo of hooves kept its steady drum, sometimes near, sometimes stolen by wind, but always there. A pulse of menace in the dark. A bend revealed an abandoned ferry dock, pilings jutting like broken ribs. On the highest post hung a rusted dinner triangle. Eli halted beneath it. "Sound it," Nuna whispered. He struck the iron with the butt of his rifle. One clear clang, then two softer taps. The note cut through fog, traveled upriver, and died. Margaret pressed a hand to Eli's shoulder. "We just woke the valley," she said. From Cottonwood Scrub, a lantern winked twice in answer, then vanished. They turned inland to a cattle trail, faint and overgrown. Sage crushed under hooves, releasing dry perfume, and somewhere a pronghorn bounded away. Past a rise, they reached Sutton's windmill, its vanes idle, lumber gray as moonlit ash. A lone figure waited at the doorframe. Jonas Sutton, rail-thin rancher with a sawed-off balanced across his arm. He squinted, recognized Eli, and stepped aside to reveal 6 other men saddling horses. Without a word, Jonas rang the mill's grain bell 4 times, slow, measured. Across the lowlands, other bells chimed in relay, turning the night into a patchwork of sleepy alarm. Eli lifted Margaret down to rest beside a water trough while he refilled canteens. Jonas leaned close. "Half the county's lighting lamps," he muttered. "You stirred a nest." Eli replied, "Red Jack stirred it. Town just woke up." He explained the compact, the sunrise deadline. Jonas's weathered face tightened, then softened. "If words could end a quarrel, my pod'd still walk these fields. But I'll ride behind you." He whistled and 3 of his hands fell in line. Rifles slung, quiet determination etched in their brows. At the mill fork, they turned toward Bethsaida Chapel, its white steeple faint against the clouded stars. The sexton, old Mrs. Tally, waited on the steps in nightclothes, clutching a brass handbell. She rang it 3 sharp peals as they passed, each clang echoing off canyon walls like a judge's gavel. In nearby bunkhouses, oil lamps flared. Silhouettes of railroad brakemen shuffled into boots and jackets. One blew a copper train whistle in 2 short bursts, the railroad's call to muster. Iron wheels answered from the depot siding, screeching as an idle locomotive rolled a yard to clear track for riders. The convoy swelled. Ranch hands, rail workers, and miners merged onto the creek road, torches held low to shield flames from wind. Tribal horsemen emerged from the shadowed cottonwoods, Cheyenne, Arapaho, Lakota, faces streaked white with peace paint, palms raised in silent greeting. Elder Nuna guided them to the column's front, staff angled like a mast in dark water. Feathered ponies stepped in rhythm with the bay, hoofbeats folding into a shared cadence that reverberated through the valley floor. Past Lone Mesa Cemetery, veteran Captain Rowe and 4 gray-bearded soldiers rode out, sabers sheathed but badges gleaming. Rowe leaned from the saddle to clasp Eli's wrist. "Good to see a Mercer leading the line again," he said, voice thick with respect. Eli nodded. His father had ridden under Rowe at Shiloh. The acknowledgement settled on him like a mantle, heavy but steadying. The trail narrowed into Switchback Gulch, walls clawing at the sky. Here Eli slowed, watching river fog curl through pine trunks. He pictured Red Jack's lookouts lining the upper rim. A misstep in this choke would bottle the column, turn it to slaughter. He raised a fist. The procession halted in near-perfect silence. Only storm drip and horse breath. Eli dismounted, handed reins to Margaret, and climbed the gulch wall alone, boots seeking quiet purchase on shale. Atop a ledge he lay flat, eyes scanning the ridge. Lightning rippled behind anvils of cloud, backlighting distant silhouettes. 5 riders, lanterns hooded, rifles across pommels. They faced the gulch mouth, watching for exactly what Eli now led. He slipped downslope, mud cold against his palms, and returned to Nuna. "Roads watched," he said. "Need a flank route." Nuna pointed her staff northeast. "Old wagon cut through Juniper Ravine. Steep, but horses can manage." Eli glanced at the growing column. Nearly 70 riders now, and more streaming in behind. "We split," he decided. "Rowe takes half up the ridge as decoy. We push the compact through the ravine." Orders whispered down the line. Captain Rowe and 30 volunteers peeled off. Torches snuffed, vanishing into pine bloom like ghosts of an older war. Eli's unit veered into Juniper Ravine, single file. The path tilted viciously, shale clattering under steel shoes, yet no horse balked. Margaret tightened her hold, but uttered no sound. The silver locket lay hidden against Eli's chest, its weight a heartbeat separate from his own. Fog thinned where ravine met open prairie, revealing the faint loom of Clearwater Bend ahead. Steeple, water tower, depot lanterns glowing dull orange. But to the south on Redstone Road, a ribbon of fire snaked across night. Red Jack's gang pressed forward, torches high, maybe 80 strong. They had bypassed Switchback Gulch, gambling on speed and terror. Eli tasted iron on his tongue, felt the bay's muscles bunch beneath him. He drew deep, cold breath. A chapel bell rang once. Matins hour. First bell. 4 more pulls followed, shakier but clear. The compact demanded full reading before that bell finished its toll. 2 pulls remained. Eli raised his rifle skyward and fired a single shot, the flare white against the prairie gloom. It wasn't aimed at any man. It was a note, a pledge, a trumpet. Every rider behind him answered, not with gunfire, but with the thunder of hooves kicking into a gallop. The column surged, river mist trailing like torn banners. Above, the second-to-last bell tolled. Clearwater Bend lay less than 2 miles ahead. Lightning washed the land in bleached gold. For a breath, Eli saw both forces, his own streaking toward the square, Red Jack's torches flaring in countercharge. 2 arrows aimed at the same dawn. The final bell began its slow, somber swing. Wind carried its first note across the valley like a call to prayer. Eli leaned low, urging the bay faster. The compact against his heart burned warm, as if ink itself remembered oaths and yearned to be spoken. Behind, the mixed company of ranchers, miners, rail hands, veterans, and tribal horsemen pounded the earth in united rhythm, a living drumbeat that refused to break. They raced the bell, the dark, the outlaw's fury, raced for words older than revenge and louder than any gun. The final toll was coming. The last chapel bell boomed as Eli's horse hit the cobbles of Clearwater Bend. Hoof irons sprayed sparks. Torches hissed in the sudden hush of town streets narrowing to a single line of gas lamps. Doors cracked open. Night-shirted residents peered out, oil lanterns trembling in their hands. Ahead, the public square yawned wide, flagpole whipping in storm wind. Eli swung his rifle overhead, voice carrying, "Keep formation, no guns unless drawn on." A second column thundered in from the south. Red Jack's riders, torches flaring, red scarves snapping like flame tongues. They reined in opposite Eli's group, 50 paces away, horses pawing gravel. The final bell beat its dying note, vibrating the air between armies. Marshal Ada Whitcomb stepped from courthouse steps, gray duster flapping, star glinting. She raised both hands. "Weapons low. By the statutes of this county, firearms only in lawful defense." Her words floated calm but hard. No one fired. Mayor Thomas Hale rushed forward, coat half-buttoned, face ashen yet set. He saw Margaret astride Eli's bay and stumbled in relief. Tears cut clean lines down the dust on his cheeks, but Margaret lifted one hand, halting him. "We finished this in order," she said. Hale nodded, swallowed, stood beside Ada. Eli dismounted, handed reins to a railman, and drew the Clearwater Compact from his Bible cover. Elder Nuna followed, planting her white cedar staff upright in the stone planter at square center. The glyphs caught lantern glow. Sap scent rose, sharp and living. Riders from every trade and tribe closed in a rough crescent behind Eli. Torches lowered, creating a trembling aurora of light. Red Jack rode forward alone, revolver resting casual across his thigh. His eyes flicked from staff to parchment to the sea of mixed faces. "Pretty pageant," he sneered, "but I'm still owed 30,000 in ransom." Eli met his gaze. "You were promised the mayor's grief. That debt just expired." Murmurs rippled. Some of Jack's own men shifted uneasily. Ada's voice cut through. "Coulter, you're outnumbered and inside town limits. Surrender weapons and face court." Jack laughed once, sharp. He cocked his Colt and pointed skyward. "Court's asleep. Gold's awake." He fired a single shot into the dawn-gray clouds. Echo cracked past rooftops. No volley answered. Instead, a child, barefoot, soot-smudged, maybe 7, broke from the crowd, clutching a white prairie daisy. She walked to Jack's horse, eyes round with fear and stubborn hope, and laid the bloom atop his boot. The simple gift landed louder than bullets. Jack's mount shifted, his arms sagged. Silence pulled thick. Eli used it. He unrolled the compact, parchment trembling in wind. His voice, low but clear, carried, "We, the undersigned peoples of Clearwater Valley, rancher, railhand, miner, freedman, tribe, swear defense and fair trade, one to another, and bind quarrel to peaceful word at first bell." Each line he read, Captain Rowe, just arriving with his decoy riders, echoed in weathered baritone. Tribal horsemen spoke the Cheyenne version. A railman offered Spanish. Words braided through lamplight. Old ink pulled into living breath. With every verse, Eli felt tension loosen, as if the parchment itself poured balm into bruised air. Margaret stepped down, wrists bandaged with Eli's neckerchief, and produced a fresh fountain pen. She offered it first to Ada, who signed beneath the original names. Mayor Hale followed, hands steady now, then Elder Nuna, tracing elegant glyph strokes. Captain Rowe marked an X beside his wartime company nickname. A miner with coal-black fingernails added his flourish. One by one, townsfolk queued, torchlit faces solemn. Red Jack watched, gun lowering inch by inch, torches reflecting in eyes suddenly older. The child still stood by his stirrup, daisy wilting. He dismounted, boots scuffing gravel loud in the hush, and removed his red scarf. Slow as confession, he pressed the scarf to the ink, blotting his own name in crimson. When he lifted the cloth, his pistol clattered to stone. Ada stepped forward, cuffed his wrists with leather thongs. No cheer rose, only a collective breath. Something brittle eased but not yet broken. Distant horizon blushed apricot. First sunlight struck courthouse windows, shattering into gold shards across the square. Trumpeter Wesley Sutton lifted a battered brass bugle and blew assembly. The tune climbed the dawn, a Civil War relic calling men not to battle, but to stand again as neighbors. Eli felt the bay nudge his shoulder, warm and solid. He rubbed the horse's cheek, then looked to Margaret. Her smile was small, tired, but certain. She fastened the locket back around her neck, the silver catching first light. "Promise kept," she whispered. Elder Nuna nodded, staff thumping once. "Promise spoken lives longer than promise buried." Ada faced the gathered masses. "Clearwater Bend. Go home, cook breakfast, mend roofs, greet your kin. Court convenes at noon for proper charges. Until then, remember, mercy bought this calm." People dispersed slowly, like embers carried on soft wind. Some clasped shoulders. Others simply stared at the rising sun, as if seeing color for the first time, after a long, dust-bitten film. Eli rolled the compact, slipped it into Ada's weatherproof satchel. She tapped 2 fingers to her brim in thanks. Captain Rowe approached, offering an envelope of reward cash. Eli shook his head. "Put it toward widening Redstone Bridge," he said. "Let wagons meet without forcing either to the edge." Rowe's grin folded creases deeper into his sun-scarred cheeks. Mercer men never did take easy money. The church bell rang, a gentle, everyday chime now, calling bakers, shopkeepers, children stirring from beds. As riders began to file out, a breeze lifted cedar scent through the square, mingling with coal smoke and morning bread. Eli inhaled, felt something uncoil behind his ribs, fear slipping into the same river that had carried them here. Red Jack, hands bound yet head unbowed, glanced once at Margaret. "Lady," he rasped, "never meant for Scripture to be part of this." She answered softly, "Scripture was always part of this. You just forgot the verse." Marshal Ada led him away toward the jailhouse. His scarf clutched in her fist like seized flame. Eli mounted up, base-stepping light now. As he turned, he caught sight of that child with the daisy, watching him. He tipped his hat, she smiled gap-toothed, and ran off into morning light. The sun climbed another finger's breadth, rinsing the square in palest gold. Somewhere a rooster crowed, late but earnest, as if announcing not dawn, but the dawn after. Eli rode toward the livery to check his horse. Compact, no longer burning, but resting quiet, a story half told. Behind him, the white cedar staff stood alone in the planter, glowing softly in sunrise like frozen lightning. Reminder that peace, once planted, expects tending. 6 weeks passed, and Clearwater Bend woke to its first dawn salute festival. The sun not yet above the mesas, but Main Street already alive with lantern strings and the smell of corn griddle. From the livery loft, Eli Mercer watched colors sharpen from peach to gold across the newly widened Redstone Bridge. Fresh planks, iron braces, room for 2 wagons to pass without crowding. Smithy hammers rang at the railings, driving the last bolts home before the parade. Down below, school children in patched coats lined up behind a banner that read, "One Valley, Many Hands." Each held a cedar sapling wrapped in damp burlap. Elder Nuna Greyfeather moved along the row, whispering a blessing in Cheyenne, touching every twig with her white cedar staff. The kids took the attention like solemn duty, faces glowing in torchlight. Eli saddled his bay, clipped the reins over one arm, and walked toward the square. The courthouse steps had been draped in bunting, but what held his eye was a glass case fixed beside the door. Inside, protected from weather and wandering hands, lay the silver locket open flat, parchment displayed beneath. A brass plaque read, "Clearwater Compact, spoken at first bell, renewed by all." Beneath that, smaller text, "Don't let it grow dust again." Mayor Thomas Hale spotted Eli and hurried over, top hat tipped back. "Bridge inspector arrives at noon," the mayor said, half breathless from errands. "But she won't find a loose nail. Rowe's veterans worked like they were raising a fort." He thrust a folded deed toward Eli. "Town grants you the land south of the bend. River pasture, good graze. Payment for services rendered." Eli smiled, pushed the deed back. "Give it to the church orphan fund, Tom. Kids need seed more than I need acreage." Hale stared, tearing up for the second time in 2 months, then tucked the paper into his vest. "You're a mule for turning away blessing, Mercer, but a fine mule." A graded wagon rattled past, driven by 2 deputies. In the back stood Red Jack Coulter, hands unbound now but holding a shovel, denim shirt smeared with clay. He'd spent the weeks helping reinforce the flood dike, still had months of labor ahead before a trial could weigh his fate. He met Eli's eyes without defiance, only the blunt honesty of a man who knew debt and meant to pay it. Eli touched his hat brim. Jack nodded once, respectful, then tapped the wagon rail to signal he was ready for day's work. Church bell struck 6. Trumpeter Wesley Sutton climbed onto the chapel roof and blew a bright cavalry call. Torches were doused in unison, and the valley filled instead with sunrise, light slipping silver along New Bridge iron, dust motes spinning like tiny planets. Marshal Ada Whitcomb marched to the square's center, opened her ledger, and called, "Procession, form." First rode the tribal horsemen, paint fresh, feathers fluttering. Next came railway men on drayscenes clacking across temporary track laid just for show. Coal miners followed on sturdy mules, lamps flickering like low stars on their caps. Captain Rowe led his veterans, sabers glittering but sheathed. Then came the ranchers and farmers, Jonas Sutton among them, wagons piled with seed sacks. Sacks later gifted to every family that had lost crop in the spring flood. Behind, townsfolk on foot carried bread loaves and quilts. And above all, the children with their cedar saplings, steps eager, roots dripping. Eli and Margaret slipped into line between the ranchers and the veterans. She rode side saddle on a chestnut borrowed from the Hale family barn. Wrists healed to pale scars, eyes bright under a straw hat. Around her neck hung a simple brass locket, a gift from Eli, empty but ready for a new story. "We plant after the hymn," she told him. "Roe's wife saved a hoe just for me." Eli chuckled. "Mind the mayor. He's likely to offer the hoe with a proclamation." They crossed Redstone Bridge at a walk. River below sang over granite, clear from recent rains. Children tossed flower petals that spun on the current, bright flecks against blue. At midspan, Eli reined in, letting others crowd ahead, just to look. 2 lanes wide now, rails chest high, a meeting place rather than a choke point. He touched a bolt head, still warm from forging, and felt pride rise quiet as dawn. On Courthouse Green, the procession halted in a broad circle. Marshal Ada raised her hands for silence. Wind rustled banners. Somewhere a rooster answered. Ada spoke. 6 weeks back, bullets cost less than words. This morning, words bought us quiet. May that debt never come due again. She turned to the children. Plant. Little hands set saplings into pre-dug holes along the river path. Miners shoveled soil, veterans tamped, tribal drummers beat slow heart rhythms. Elder Nuna poured river water from a clay jar onto each root ball, murmuring, "Grow straight, remember storms." Finally, she passed the empty jar to Red Jack, who had stepped from his wagon. Without being asked, he carried it to the river, refilled, and returned to water the last tree himself. No cheer greeted the act. It needed none. Trumpeter Wesley lifted his bugle again, but this time played a tune Clearwater hadn't heard in years. "Home on the range!" Voices caught the easy climb and drift of it. Soon the whole green hummed with song, railmen in gravel baritones, schoolgirls in sweet, uncertain alto, even Red Jack in a rough whisper. Eli sang too, low and steady, eyes on the young cedars gleaming in sun. When the final note faded, Margaret leaned toward Eli. "Your father would say the land's heart just took a deeper beat." Eli nodded. That it did. He thought of his own heart and how the compact's parchment now rested behind courthouse glass, not burning yet alive, beating through every cedar root and bridge beam. The crowd began drifting toward breakfast tables set in the shade, but a hush lingered, as if no one wanted to break the fragile shine of morning. Eli swung down, found the little girl with the daisy, now clasped in her braids, and lifted her to see the sapling she had planted. "Water, it come July," he told her. She grinned, gap-toothed. "Promise." He set her down, watching her race off, barefoot through dew sparkle. Sun climbed higher, warm on his shoulders. Somewhere hammer blows resumed, the work never truly done. Eli placed a palm on the cedar staff still standing in its planter, felt bark cool under skin, and whispered the line he'd carried since that night by the river. Kindness with a spine. Then he turned toward the smell of coffee, the sound of laughter, and the long, ordinary day waiting to be lived. And if you ever ride through Clearwater Bend at dawn, follow the cedar trail. Each tree tells the same story, roots locked in the promise of many voices. Kindness with a spine. The notion that mercy must be backed by courage anchors every frame of this tale. The widened redstone bridge, the young cedar trees drinking river water, and the compact sealed behind courthouse glass all point to one truth. Peace doesn't appear out of thin air. It grows from memory, bravery, and shared responsibility. Eli turns down reward money, Red Jack repays his debt with honest labor, and children plant roots for tomorrow. Real victory arrives not with the last gunshot, but with an entire valley raising its voice in Home on the Range beneath a clean sunrise. If the story left even a small ripple in you, let it travel farther. Tap the like button, share your favorite moment in the comments, and hit subscribe with the bell on so you won't miss the next Western legend where ordinary folks stand tall and dawn is always worth defending.